Hi, I'm Dustin Abbott, and what we're doing here today is a lot of you have asked questions regarding the sharpness of the new EOS R5 compared to Sony. And so obviously I do own the A7R Mark III, which is quite similar in its overall resolution, 42 versus the 45 megapixels here. And so what I'm doing is both on a chart test, but then also in a real world scene where I have focused, if you can see behind me, I've focused on a very specific point manually with both cameras. And so I've used two different lenses, one for a chart test, a 35 millimeter f1.4L Mark II, an extremely sharp lens. And then in this case, I have the 100 millimeter f2.8 macro. Now, both of these are Canon lenses. However, in both cases, I'm having to use an adapter because an EF mount is not native to either one of these cameras. And so in both cases, we're having to adapt, and I'm manually focusing. And so it should give us a good comparison point to see, okay, how sharp are they, or how sharp is EOS R5 by comparison to a well-established, very sharp camera sensor in the A7R Mark III. So we've got our shots, let's take a look at them. So we're going to start off by taking a look at chart type testing here to see if we're getting sufficiently equal amounts of resolution from the two cameras. And so you can see in both cases I've used the EF 35mm f1.4L Mark II, f5.6. This lens is extremely sharp by that point. And so we're going to look here at a 2:1, as you can see, magnification. So I mean, this is like a 200% magnification. And so as you can see, obviously it's extremely sharp on both of these cameras. And so slightly higher resolution on the EOS R5 on the right side. But as far as saying one is sharper than the other, there is a little bit of a difference in the way that the sharpness is rendered. You can see they're not identical sensors, but we can see, for example, looking at the text here, both of them are very, very sharp. You know, I think I would say probably equally sharp. Let's take a look here, and so you can see that there's definitely no question that the R3 starts to tend towards a moire pattern before the EOS R5 does. And so, you know, that's one of maybe the advantages of having the AA filter, which, you know, Canon is still kind of big on most of their cameras. But I don't know that it's a bad decision, because I don't really see any kind of loss of resolution or detail by comparison here. I mean, the EOS R5 looks, I think, every bit as sharp and has great contrast here. Once again, down here we can see with the A7R Mark III, definitely a tendency towards moire where the R5 doesn't show it. And again, I think that the R5 looks equally sharp. Down here towards the edge, and yes, this lens is fantastic. Look how sharp it is, even in the corners. But again, I think that we've got fairly equal in results here. Finally, we'll pop up into the upper corner, and you can see once again we have, you know, similar results across the frame. And so bottom line is that as far as chart testing, I think that the EOS R5 is plenty sharp. So here we have our second test where we are utilizing the Canon 100mm f2.8, and in this case we're going to shoot at f8. Now in this case I'm going to go back to a 1:1 pixel level out in real world situations. This gives you kind of a, you know, I think a better end result. And so this is actually our plane of focus. I manually focused in this area, and so what you can see is that looking at this area, the EOS R5 is definitely rendering, I think, equal amounts of information, and you can see that both. I mean, it looks very, very sharp. It's a great, you know, lens. It's a great scene here, and so you can see that, you know, really everything kind of details up in a similar fashion. And let's pop back over here for a second, and if we look, you know, just at these kind of random trees at different places, I mean, everything looks nice and crisp on both of them. And so again, I don't think that the EOS R5 really suffers from having the AA filter. It's certainly capable of producing highly detailed images. So I hope that this helps you to maybe allay some fears or concerns if you're considering the EOS R5, you know, concerns over whether or not the having an AA filter, which is something that's kind of been, you know, it's one of those things that happens on the internet where people make a big deal out of something that frankly probably rarely makes much of a real world difference for consumers. And it's just one of those things that, you know, that people love to have controversy over on the internet. But as we can see here, having an AA filter maybe does help a little bit with moire, and that might help you some with, you know, particularly with video production. But as far as it impacting in a negative way your image quality, and so you're not going to be able to get sharp images out of the camera, as you can see, that's clearly not the case. And I've always considered the sensor that was in the R2 and then, you know, slightly improved and tweaked in the R3 from Sony to be a great sensor that delivers highly detailed images. And so as we can see, the EOS R5 easily holds its own against that. I will say this in conclusion, and that is that if you purchase any new camera, I recommend taking a little time and playing with sharpening settings. And I think that each camera system, the files behave in just a little bit different ways. And that's particularly true, for example, with Fuji. And anytime that you have the X-Trans sensor instead of a Bayer sensor, you have to approach sharpening in a different kind of way. And while it's particularly true there, I think it's true to a lesser degree with every new camera. And I spend a little bit of time when I purchase a new camera just kind of playing with different files and tweaking and just kind of getting a sense of where I can get that maximum benefit of getting the most sharpness out of my files, but without crossing that line to where you start to introduce halos. And you know, that some of that is trial and error, and it's also learning to do it. And if you're really inexperienced with that, for my patrons, I will be sharing the settings that I came up with that I felt, at least in Lightroom or ACR, deliver the best sharpness that I found so far on the EOS R5. I hope this has helped you today, maybe answered a few questions, allayed a few fears, and given you a little bit more information for making a purchasing decision in the future. I'm Dustin Abbott. Look in the description down below if you do want linkage to links to purchase an EOS R5, and of course links to follow me on social media, become a patron, or sign up for my newsletter. And if you haven't already, please click that subscribe button right here on YouTube. Thanks for watching. Have a great day.